I, 32F, have been married to my husband, Mark, 34M, for 10 years. And we have a beautiful daughter, Lily, who just turned 8. From the very first day Mark brought me home to meet his family, his mother, Carol, made it crystal clear that I would never be good enough for her precious son. She looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe, and that look has never really changed. Carol has spent the last decade treating me like an outsider who stole her son away from her. She would forget to invite me to family dinners, then act shocked when Mark showed up with me anyway. She would make comments about my job as a marketing manager, saying things like how nice it must be to have such a simple career compared to Mark's work as a doctor. She would bring up his ex-girlfriends at every holiday gathering, talking about how accomplished they were and wondering out loud what happened to them. The worst part was how she used our daughter, Lily, as a weapon, constantly telling her she could come visit Grandma anytime, with or without Mommy, making it clear that I was optional in my own family. 3 months ago, Carol announced in the family group chat that she and her husband, David, were planning a huge celebration for their 40th wedding anniversary. They had booked an entire week at a 5-star resort in Hawaii for the whole family. She typed out this long message listing every single person who was invited. She mentioned Mark's brother Tom and his wife. She mentioned Mark's sister Sarah and her husband and their 3 kids. She wrote, Mark and Lily. My name was nowhere to be found. Not a typo, not an oversight, a deliberate exclusion. When I pointed this out to Mark, he immediately got defensive. You know how Mom is with technology, he said. She probably just forgot to type your name. But we both knew that wasn't true. Carol had managed to remember every other spouse, every grandchild, even her sister who lives in Canada. I pushed him to call her and fix it. I sat there listening as Mark called his mother. I could hear her voice through the phone, making excuse after excuse. Oh, I assumed she couldn't get the time off work, Carol said. You know how demanding her little job can be? Then she switched tactics. I thought it would be nice for you and Lily to have some special father-daughter bonding time. Finally, she delivered her real reason. Frankly, Mark, I wasn't sure you two could afford her share of the expenses. These resorts are very expensive, and I didn't want to put financial pressure on your family. Mark pushed back weakly, but I could hear him backing down with every word. When he hung up, he turned to me and said he would handle it later, that he didn't want to start a big fight right before the holidays. That was when I realized that Mark would never truly stand up to his mother. Not for me, maybe not even for himself. That evening, I was doing laundry when I heard Carol on the phone with her sister. She didn't know I was in the next room. It's finally sorted, Carol said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. She's not coming. We can finally have a real family trip without her ruining the mood. Mark understands that some things are just for family. That was it. That was the moment I decided I was done being the victim in Carol's twisted game. The next week, I received my annual bonus from work. It was much larger than expected, thanks to a successful campaign I had led. As I looked at that number in my bank account, an idea started forming in my mind. I remembered Carol mentioning the name of the resort during one of her bragging sessions. I looked it up online and called them directly. The reservation agent was incredibly helpful. Using the booking reference I had seen in Carol's messages, I was able to access the details of the entire family reservation. The outstanding balance for the whole group was substantial, but with my bonus, I could cover it. My heart was pounding as I gave them my credit card information, but I wasn't done yet. I asked about upgrades. The agent told me about the presidential villa, the most exclusive accommodation at the resort. It was separate from the main hotel, with its own private beach access, a personal butler, and amenities that the regular rooms couldn't even dream of. I booked it for myself, Mark, and Lily. Then I gave the hotel staff very specific instructions. My payment was to remain confidential until the family checked in. They were happy to accommodate such a generous guest. The day of the trip arrived. We all met at the airport, and Carol was in her element, directing everyone like a general commanding troops. She completely ignored me, treating me like I was just the hired help who had driven Mark and Lily to the airport. During the flight, she made sure to loudly discuss all the family activities she had planned, never once looking in my direction. When we arrived at the resort, it was even more beautiful than the pictures. Carol strutted to the check-in desk like she owned the place. She turned to me with that familiar smirk and said the words I had been waiting to hear. "This is where we part ways." It was so helpful of you to drive them. Did you really think you were invited? I stayed completely calm and gave Lily a small nod. My daughter, my brilliant, wonderful daughter, stepped forward with the gold-embossed envelope I had given her that morning. "Mommy said this was for you, Grandma," Lily said sweetly. Carol looked confused, but took the envelope. Her fingers fumbled slightly as she opened it. Inside was the official resort receipt, showing a 0 balance for the entire party reservation. My name was printed, clearly under the payment section. Attached to the receipt were the key cards and a printed itinerary for the presidential villa. I watched as the color drained from her face. At that exact moment, the hotel manager appeared. He had been waiting for this moment, as I had arranged. "Welcome, Mrs. Thompson," he said to me loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Your villa is ready. We want to thank you for your incredible generosity in covering the arrangements for your entire party. It's not often we have a guest who pays for such a large group. The presidential villa has been prepared to your specifications." The silence that followed was absolute. Carol stood there with her mouth hanging open, the receipt shaking in her hands. Mark stared at me, and then a huge, proud smile spread across his face. For the first time in our marriage, I saw him look at his mother with something other than automatic deference. He wrapped his arm around me and pulled me close. Tom and Sarah and their spouses were all frozen in shock. They had just realized that their entire vacation, the vacation they had been excitedly planning for months, had been paid for by the woman Carol had tried to exclude. David, Carol's husband, cleared his throat awkwardly and mumbled something that might have been thank you, but Carol remained silent. The manager continued, clearly enjoying his role in this drama. "The presidential villa includes a private beach, a personal chef available 24 hours, a private pool, and, of course, access to all our VIP experiences. The rest of your party is in our beautiful garden view rooms in the main building. Shall I have someone escort you to your respective accommodations?" The week that followed was the sweetest 7 days of my life. Every morning, Mark, Lily, and I would have breakfast on our private terrace overlooking the ocean. Our butler, James, would bring us fresh fruit and pastries while we planned our day. We had access to exclusive restaurants that required special reservations, private snorkeling tours, and a beach that was just for villa guests. Meanwhile, Carol and the others were in their standard rooms. Nice rooms, certainly, but nothing compared to what we had. They would see us at the resort restaurants, being escorted to the VIP sections. They would watch as we were picked up by a private golf cart while they walked in the heat. Every single amenity, every moment of special treatment was a reminder that I had paid for everything, that Carol's power play had backfired spectacularly. The best part was dinner on the third night. The resort held a special gala for their VIP guests. Mark, Lily, and I attended in our finest clothes. As we were being seated at the best table, I saw Carol and the others being turned away at the door because the event was exclusive to villa guests only. The look on her face was worth every penny I had spent. Carol tried to approach me once during the trip. It was by the main pool, and she started to say something about how we needed to talk about boundaries and respect. I simply smiled at her and said that I completely agreed, and that I was so glad she was finally understanding the importance of including all family members in family events. Then I walked away and left her standing there. Mark was a different person that week. Free from his mother's constant control and manipulation, he was the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago. He told me one night, as we watched the sunset from our private beach, that he had never been more proud to be my husband. He said he was sorry it had taken him so long to see what his mother had been doing, and he promised things would be different from now on. Lily had the time of her life. She loved our villa and kept asking if we could live there forever. She also noticed the change in dynamics. One morning, she asked me why Grandma was being so quiet. I told her that sometimes people need time to think about their behavior, and that Grandma was doing some important thinking. On our last night, the hotel hosted a farewell dinner for all the guests. The manager made a special point of acknowledging the major celebrations happening that week. When he mentioned the anniversary party, he also mentioned that it had been generously sponsored by Mrs. Thompson. He asked me to stand, and the entire dining room applauded. Carol had to sit there and clap for me, the woman she had tried to humiliate and exclude. The flight home was very different from the flight there. Carol didn't direct anyone. She didn't make plans or give orders. She sat quietly with David, who kept patting her hand like he was comforting a child. Tom and Sarah both made a point of thanking me personally for the trip, saying it was the vacation of a lifetime. They also mentioned that they hoped all future family gatherings would include everyone, giving Carol pointed looks as they said it. That trip changed everything in our family dynamic. Carol never again tried to exclude me from family events. She never again made snide comments about my job or my worth. She had lost all her power over Mark, over me, over our family. The woman who had spent a decade trying to make me feel small and unwanted had been defeated by her own cruelty. Mark kept his promise. He started standing up to his mother, setting boundaries that should have been set years ago. Our marriage became stronger than ever. We were finally a team, united against anyone who would try to come between us. Lily learned an important lesson about standing up for yourself and not letting anyone make you feel less than you are. The best part is that Carol can never tell the story from her perspective without admitting that she tried to exclude me from a family vacation. She can never paint herself as the victim without revealing her own cruelty. She is trapped by the truth of what happened, forced to live with the consequences of her actions. That vacation was supposed to be Carol's moment of triumph, a week where she could pretend I didn't exist and have her son and granddaughter all to herself. Instead, it became the week she learned that I wasn't going anywhere, that I was not only part of the family, but strong enough to stand up for myself and generous enough to include even those who had excluded me. The resort still sends me promotional emails about returning to the presidential villa. I keep them as reminders of the sweetest revenge I ever served. Sometimes when Carol is visiting and starts to slip back into her old patterns, I'll casually mention how beautiful Hawaii was and ask if she remembers that amazing week. She always changes the subject immediately, and Mark and I share a knowing smile. That's the thing about revenge served at a 5-star resort. It comes with excellent service, beautiful presentation, and memories that last forever. Carol learned that when you try to exclude someone from the family, you might just find yourself on the outside, looking in, watching from your standard room as the person you tried to humiliate enjoys the villa with your son and granddaughter. The power shift was complete, permanent, and absolutely deserved.